Hello, everybody. Here we are again for another live stream, self-publishing advice from the Alliance of Independent Authors. I'm Orna Ross, and with me today, all the way from Australia to London and back again around the world to you, wherever you are, is Lauren Lott. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Orna. Thank you
How
for
are
having me.
you?
I'm really good. It's 8 o'clock here in Australia, and there's a possum in the roof, and so that scratching won't interfere with the audio. There's also a few kookaburras outside, so we'll see how we go.
That's lovely. I'm not hearing any possum scratches right now, so hopefully he'll behave himself. And when you say 8 o'clock, you mean 8 a.m. And here in London, it's 9 p.m. the previous evening. So we're really doing the world clock here this
Yeah.
evening. But we're here, folks, because we're going to be discussing the topic of putting together your very first poetry collection, which is something that Lauren did this year and to great success. And we just have been watching her journey as she slowly got it together and told people it was coming and put it out there and all that happened over the launch time and since, and thought it would be really great to get you in to talk about lessons learned, what you do differently, what you'll do the same next time out, and all that kind of thing. So thanks so much for coming along to share your experience. Before we start, tell us a little bit about yourself as a person, and maybe a little bit about yourself as a poet. What's your poetry biography, for want of a better
Yes.
phrase?
I'm in Australia here in a place called Lake Macquarie. It's on the east coast of New South Wales, about 2 hours from Sydney. And I'm a mum and I work casually. But other than that, I write poetry, and I started writing poetry probably about 5 years ago. I went through quite a hard situation, Orna. My family suffered a loss about 5 years ago, and through that situation, I suffered emotionally and psychologically. And all I could really read for a season was poetry, which was surprising because you would think, oh, it's quite deep. Who has the stamina for that? But I just turned to poetry and found so much light and so much life in poetry, in poets like Mark Nepo and Mary Oliver and people like that. And from there, I started to write my own poetry, and I saw the effect and felt the effect that poetry had in my own life. And after experiencing that, I wanted to do that for other people as well. I wanted to write words that would help people to get up, to get unstuck, words that would empower them and breathe life into their lives. And yeah, so it's been an interesting experience starting out writing poetry, and here I am 5 years later with my first book.
Fantastic. And you certainly do that in terms of I came to your work through Instagram, and you put out very regularly post poems on Instagram, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. But first, I'd really like to ask you about why you decided to self-publish this first poetry collection. And did you think at all about getting some help, maybe finding a publisher or any other alternative, or did you always know, oh no, I'm going to self-publish it?
With poetry, definitely, I just always just wanted to do it myself. I had a clear vision of what I wanted the book to be and how I wanted the book to look, and I really just wanted creative control of that. So that definitely was just, I wanted to indie publish that. I have actually written children's fiction as well, a few manuscripts, which I've been trying to get traditionally published for about the last, I would say 7 years, but to no success yet. So with the fiction, I still am trying to plug away at the traditional route, probably because it is children's, and I feel like I I need the experts on my side to help me with illustrations and all the rest of it. But when it comes to poetry, it's really close to me, poetry, and so I wanted to have as much creative control as I possibly can. And to tell you the truth, I'm so happy that I went this way, because I can't imagine not having the creative control after going through the process.
So let's talk then a little bit about the process. Which parts of it did you find most challenging? Let's start with the challenges and then we'll talk about the rewards.
Oh, the most challenging part for me, Orna, was without a doubt was the formatting. It just stumped me for so long. I'm not a Mac user, so I don't have Vellum, and I'm not a designer, so I found the formatting process very challenging. I use Word every day for word processing, but Word was not created to design books. So there was a lot of Googling and a lot of trying to work out stuff, problem solving, and it took me way too long to format it. But in the end, if I could just show you, I just went for the cleanest kind of formatting that I could. And I'm proud of that, it is clean. It's very nice. But it's surprising with Word how much effort it takes to get it to look like that. Whereas with other programs, it's probably much easier. But for me, because I'm not techie or designer focused, the formatting definitely was the most challenging. But the thing is, if I can do it, Orna, anybody can. Because like I said, I'm not techie or a designer. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it is something that on your first book as a poet, because poetry is much trickier formatting wise than say straight fiction or nonfiction text, which kind of finds its own. Let's say Word was not designed for poets. And in fact, there is no formatting software designed for poets. Gap in the market, self-service publishing people. So
fix that problem.
Yes, it is something that we hear a lot. I use Vellum. I find Vellum sufficient, but it has its constraints, and there are certain things that I can't do. And sometimes, the poem ends up, and as you will know very well, changing the format changes the poem. And poems are very sensitive and delicate, and a word on a different line becomes a different kind of emphasis and all of that. So formatting is super important.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that was kind of the hardest thing. And then what kind of delighted you? What were the best things about self-publishing this collection?
The best things, wow. Well, I really loved working with other people. I really loved working with my editor and my book cover designer. These two guys were great in that they didn't just provide a service for me, but they added to the project. If you could see the cover, I know this is not good for podcast listeners, but my original idea was just a burnt out tree. But my designer, after showing him some of the poems and telling him the gist of the book, he actually added a whole lot of visual detail to the front cover. And when I saw it, it's like he interpreted exactly what I was trying to say in the poetry. And same with my editor. He was just fantastic. He didn't just edit the book, but he actually spoke into the work and really encouraged me with word choice and with what poem goes where. And both of these guys, both Glenn and Islam, the two fellas that helped me, were just an absolute delight to work with. And it just really emphasized to me, Orna, the importance of getting a great team around you. For a long time, I thought I could do it all myself, but I am so glad that I didn't. I'm so glad that I asked these two fellows to come along and to contribute to this work, because they didn't just edit it or design, a pretty cover. They actually added depth to the project, and it was just such a delight creatively to work with them.
Yes, I think you were very wise, really. I think that is the thing until you've experienced it as a writer, I
Yes.
think we don't understand how much other creative professionals, it takes more than one person to make a great book. I really believe, yeah. And it's great you had such a positive experience with the first people you brought around you, because that's not by any means inevitable. Often we have to go through a few designers and a few editors before we find our team. So sounds like you struck gold straight away, which was marvelous.
Yeah, I definitely did. 100%. I'd give them 10 out of 10, both of them, and I'm really hoping that I'll work with them again.
That's wonderful. So that was the kind of the production, the putting it all together. How long did it take, from first concept to actually saying, okay, I've now got the manuscript, it's formatted, it's ready, the cover is ready, I'm ready to begin to upload. How long did that take for you?
The writing process, and you'd probably be able to understand this, Orna, it actually took me quite a long time. Just working out what the work was and trying to, does this poem fit? Does this poem not fit? So actually putting the manuscript together and writing it took quite a long time. I call the writing process, some people would say to me, "What are you doing today, Lauren?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm sorting between wounds and scars." And
Oh, I love it.
that's what the writing process was for me. Working out whether a poem was a wound or a scar. A wound, if you look at it, it's all gashy and yucky, and a lot of the time people don't want to look at that. It doesn't really help them to look at that wound. But a scar, a lot of the time if you've got a scar, someone will walk up to you and say, "Oh, how did you get that scar?" There's a story behind the scar. And so I wanted to make sure that I was putting poems into the book that were scars and not wounds, because I wanted the work to help people. I didn't just want to shock or vent in the book. I wanted the work to be something that empowers others. Sometimes you can read poems and they actually trigger you into your own anxiety or your own distress, and I didn't want to do that for people. I wanted to make sure that I was delivering a beautiful, empowering poem, but at the same time being 100% authentic. And in order to deliver that work, there needed to be healing on my part, which means that the writing of the book took the time that it took. So once I got all my scars together, the actual process of getting it edited to getting it up and people purchasing it was only about 12 weeks.
Wow.
So that was very quick. I was just like, yep, I'm going to publish this. And I got on the train. I made that first move. And then 12 weeks later, my book was out into the world.
Fantastic. I love how you describe this, the sorting and, what makes the cut and what doesn't make the cut. And it's so important. I think it's one of the things about a first collection that can be very challenging. It sounds like it wasn't overly challenging for you, just the right amount of challenging, as it were. But sometimes, the difference between the poem that we write for ourselves and the
Yep.
poems that we write for other people. And we don't know when we're writing. We write them all for ourselves to start, but we don't know until afterwards. And, when it comes to putting stuff together for a selection or a collection or whatever, we don't actually know. And the wounds and the scars, I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Really, really great way to describe it.
Yeah. Looking back, I could probably say, oh, I've got about 5 books, but only one of them's been published, because I've got 4 books of wounds and 1 book of scars. But yeah.
Excellent. So I came to your work, as I said, through Instagram, and talk to us a little bit about, did you start doing your Instagram for yourself? Did you consciously say to yourself, okay, Instagram is where the poets are all hanging out. I'm going to use Instagram as my social media in order to let people know about this book that's coming. Tell us about your Instagram journey.
I first started putting quotes and poems on my personal Instagram page. I have two Instagram uh, pages, and then I just figured that some people don't want to look at the quotes and they don't want to read the poems. They just want to follow me because they're interested in my family and my life, but they don't necessarily want the poetry. So I separated them, and I started putting quotes and poetry up on a personal page, not on my personal page, sorry, on a different page. It didn't actually get much traction for a long, 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 long time. And I don't know what happened. Maybe I turned a corner personally. Maybe something happened within me first, Orna, but then all of a sudden it just started to grow a little. And from there, I had uh, a little platform of about 500 people to start promoting my poetry and my upcoming poetry book. So I started off with it all mashed in together, and that really wasn't working for me. So it's when I separated it, I started to find out what kind of thing I could post, and I could see who was actually following me for my poetry and who was actually following for my personal life.
Sure. And do you enjoy Instagram? Is it a chore?
It's not a chore for me. It's not a chore for me. I just think it's amazing that we can post whatever and people all over the world can see it. It's such a gift to us, Orna. I think if you grow up in a world where you don't have these resources, like me, I was born in 1978. So I grew up in the 80s as a child, and then in the 90s as a teen, and we didn't have any of this. And so I remember a lot of the time I'd have so many questions, and if you had questions, you just ask somebody, and if they don't know the answer, then nobody knew the answer. But now we've got Google and YouTube and Instagram and the internet. And so we've got all these amazing tools at our fingertips. And so the fact that I get to post on Instagram every day, it is a bit of a spin out to me. Like, I don't take it for granted at all. That I get to touch and talk to people all over the world. Like even this, what we're doing today, Orna, you're in London and I'm in Lake Macquarie now, and it's crazy. You can see me and I can see you. And I know lots of people don't think it's a big deal, but I still think it's amazing. And I think when we have these opportunities and these gifts, that we should steward them well, and we should use them to our advantage, and we should post things and put things up in the world that will bring people encouragement and make the world a better place.
That's just great. And can you talk to people a little bit, because I know this is one of the things that people find very challenging. So you're a mom, you have a job, a day job as well, a busy life in all sorts of ways. How do you actually manage the process of both, composing your own poetry, and integrating Instagram into that? Can you talk to people a little bit about how it works for you? You're talking about posting daily, so do you write them up in batches? Do you actually do it daily? How does it go?
The mornings work best for me. If I wake up early and I grab myself a cup of tea, and I can sit down for an hour when the house is relatively still quiet, and I can write. I'm not full time, so I have days where I do have the luxury of sitting down and writing for a few hours. But I do write in batches. I try and write about up to 7 poems a day, and I put them all in folders, sort them into sections, and then I just go with what I feel and try and post every day. Which reminds me, Orna, I haven't posted this morning. I forgot about that.
You can post about this instead. Yeah.
I'll do
It's
that.
you can't do global interviews and write poetry at the same time. It's just not possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you will write these poems, and then will you say to yourself, okay, this is an Instagram one, this one might go in a book, how does that work?
Yeah, well, it goes by need really. If I need a new poem, I'll go to my folder and I'll flick through and I'll see what I have that I can post. Sometimes I repost poems. I think that's a good thing. I don't keep all my poetry up. I might go down and archive the poems once a week, and then 2 weeks later I might be able to bring one of those poems, repost one of those poems again. So I'm either bringing a new poem that I've written or an archived poem, and I only post like 5 mornings a week, not 7 days. It's either 5 or 6 days, but there's normally a day or two that I have a break from it as well, because if I don't have a break on, or I'll get really, really sick of it and it will become something that I can't do at all. So I have to go slow and just do 5 poems and then 2 days off or something like that. Yeah.
So important, creative rest. It is part of the process, and absolutely, we just go stale. It's really, really important to have
Yes.
those downtimes. You sound very organized for a poet, I have to say, with your batches and your folders and are you an organized person?
No one has ever called me organized in my life, Orna. You're the first person that's ever called me organized.
I did say for a poet. Okay, and just before we leave the social media and how you use that, you use stories as well, or just the main post facility? Do you do reels? Do you do everything on Instagram? Do you enjoy the platform and all the possibilities?
Yeah, I love it all. I do stories. I repost other people's posts. I love to support other poets and repost their poems. Sometimes when I take a walk, I'll just, story my day like that and try and observe what I can see and then share it with everyone else. I'm mindful that there's people working in offices all day or wherever, and they don't get to go for little walks every now and then, so they don't get that light and that inspiration. And I try and share that kind of thing. I've done reels as well. It's mainly sharing poems straight from my poetry book. So I'll just read a poem and from the book, and then show the front cover and put that up. So yeah, I'd actually like to get more creative with stories and reels. I might have to do a bit of research to see what I can do to freshen it up a bit and do something different. But yeah, I enjoy the whole thing. Instagram is definitely my favorite of the social media platforms. I am on Facebook as well, but I don't really care for it, Orna.
Yeah, everyone has a favorite, and it's best to go with a favorite, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, back to the book and the book publishing, is there anything you wish you kind of knew before you started?
Oh gosh. I guess the thing that I wish I knew was that the big moves were really just small steps. For so long, I was in this place of being stuck. How do I get this book out into the world? I don't know. It just didn't make sense in my head, and it just seemed like a really mammoth, big, impossible thing for some reason. And it was all in my mind. But what I just needed to do was make a few little small steps and continually make those small steps. Really, the biggest move I made was the first move I made. That message that I sent my editor. I said, "Hey, I've got a manuscript. Can you read it? Can you edit it for me?" And from that point on, it was just like one little thing after another. So I would say the big move is the first move, and looking back, that was just one little small step. And so I think I would have had a book out earlier if I had known that I don't have to do it all at first. I don't have to have this big successful creative author business just like that. I just have to make the first little step, and that first little step ended up being the biggest move.
That's fantastic. That's really lovely. So what's happening now? Is there going to be a follow-up collection? I'm sure there is.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm working on my website, reader magnet, and my email newsletter, which I must say feels like a really big move, but I'll take my own advice and just continue to make small steps with that.
Step by
Um,
step.
yeah, so I'm doing that at the moment, and I'm also about halfway through a second collection, which I'm hoping will be released early 2021.
And is it similar in tone? Is it a departure, or is it a continuation?
It's not similar, but it is complementary, I think. If you call The Remains of Burning winter, this collection is spring. That's the
Lovely.
best way I can describe it. Yeah.
That's really nice. So before we leave, and we're hopping on to the next book. Before we leave, your current book, would you like to read us a poem?
Oh yes, I would. I would. What would I read? I'll read you my favorite. Here we go. I'm so glad you asked me, Orna. Here we go. The first time I lost my leaves, I thought I was dying. I waited all winter, enduring the numb of midnight and the frost at dawn, until the sun started to set differently and the breeze began to feel a little more hopeful. I wish someone told me life is a twisted coil of beginnings and ends, that living is changing and dying is a way we each get to bless the earth.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. That's fabulous. Let people know how they can buy this lovely book and also where to find you online.
Yeah, so if you're on Instagram, I'm at L Lot Writes. It's LLOTT.writes. From there, in my bio, you will see a link to all the different places that you can find my book. If you're not on Instagram, you could go to Amazon. Or I actually published as well through Ingram Spark, which means I'm on all those amazing, exciting websites like Waterstones and Barnes and Noble and Booktopia if you're in Australia.
Fantastic. Okay, Lauren, listen, thank you so much for talking to us so early in the morning and for giving up your writing time to tell everybody about your lovely book. I'll see you on Instagram and look forward to hearing about the second collection when it comes.
Thank you, Orna.
Bye-bye, everybody. We'll see you next time. We won't have a self-publishing poetry advice podcast in December because of there's something happens at the end of December. I can't remember now, but it means that we won't have an actual slot. But we'll be back in January with another poet and some more self-publishing poetry advice. So until then, happy writing and publishing and take care. Bye-bye now.